A little boy who should have been getting ready for kindergarten instead was reported missing. And it gets worse. Los Angeles police found his body in a dumpster. Investigators say he was beaten to death, and the man accused is his mother's ex-boyfriend. Now, 20-year-old Brycson Gaddis is charged with murder. I'm Kennedi Walker, and you're watching Law&Crime. 5-year-old Elyjah Hearn is remembered as a joyful, fun-loving child, the kind of kid who lit up every room he entered. He was autistic, and while he hadn't quite mastered his speech yet, that never held him back. Born on March 20th, 2020, in the middle of a pandemic, Elyjah entered a world already full of uncertainty, but no one could have imagined how tragically and how violently his life would be taken. According to the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, Elyjah was fatally beaten inside an apartment complex on July 11th. The next day, his body was found in a dumpster. The man now accused of his murder is 20-year-old Brycson Gaddis, the ex-boyfriend of Elyjah's mother, but not his biological father. Gaddis was arrested after police received a tip that led them to an apartment in Panorama City. 5 people were initially detained, but only 2 were taken into custody. Gaddis now faces 1 felony count of murder and 1 count of assault on a child causing death. And court records reveal a violent past. Gaddis was previously charged with domestic battery, false imprisonment, and injuring a spouse in early 2025. Most recently, he faced felony charges for carjacking and assault with a deadly weapon, but those were dismissed because of a lack of a speedy trial. Now, a community is grieving the child at the center of this tragedy. Dozens gathered for a vigil to honor Elyjah, to remember his laughter, his energy, and the bright, innocent spirit that touched every life around him. And here to break down this story with me is civil rights attorney Joe Richardson. Joe, thank you so much for coming on today.
Good to be here.
So let's just jump right in. I mean, when a child is killed and there are signs of previous violence, is it ever possible to say the system failed?
Yeah, you look at a lot of things, right? Because it's so senseless, etc. So, what areas do you look into? Do you look at what the system did with this particular individual that has had a lot of problems? He's on the young end. Should he even be on the streets, right? There's the question of you don't necessarily want to judge mom, but maybe you think about mom. How did this situation occur? Now, she was an ex-boyfriend, so maybe she got wiser. He was an ex-boyfriend, so maybe he got wiser, but she's gotten wiser, but you're still in a situation. So it makes you question a lot of things, right? And the fact that this person was convicted of a lot of things or had a lot of problems before, and so it wasn't entirely unforeseeable, apparently in both Bakersfield and LA, he's been part of issues and situations where there's been phone calls where the police have been called out for domestic violence or those types of things. It certainly makes you wonder out loud, is there something that maybe the system could or should have done that it did not?
Absolutely. And I mean, just with your experience, I mean, what's unique about building a legal case when the victim is a young child who can't testify for themselves?
Well, it's it's just so sad and it's just so heartbreaking because first of all, not that there are always any good excuses for someone dying, but there's no good reason for this either. This is not a fight gone wrong. This is not. There's nothing to say, and there's nothing that makes a 5-year-old in the middle of a relationship or former relationship fair bait, as it were, for someone to tragically lose their life. So nothing makes sense here, right? So looking at it, you just have to do the things the best way that you can. If you are a system, he is entitled to a presumption of innocence. It doesn't look good at all, but there's so much that went wrong here, and you have a truly innocent party that has paid the ultimate price for whatever it is that went on before. None of it will make enough sense to say, oh, this should have happened this way. And that's what makes this so bad.
Absolutely. In a case like this, I mean, does the child's disability, Elyjah's autism, add any legal complexity or consideration?
I don't think so because I think this is so egregious, right? There's nothing to say. You're a 20-year-old that, and we're talking about an ex-boyfriend now, right? You're a 20-year-old and you're not responsible for this child. Okay, so there's nothing that keeps you from walking away. There's nothing that says this child is autistic and on the spectrum, and therefore he egged him on, and somehow it would be understandable that it would result in death and throwing someone in the garbage. And so there's nothing that's going to desensitize or lessen the blow for him, as it were.
Well, I didn't mean lessen. I mean, like, is there any way even the charges could get upgraded since the child had a disability?
I think there can be an upgrade because for two reasons. First of all, there is the matter of, this is not a second degree thing. This is not, and I think it makes the child and the circumstances more sympathetic and more likely to come after him. The other enhancer is his previous crimes, right? The things that he's done before, et cetera. Whereas on the state side, we just got done talking about this with P. Diddy. If he was on the state side, he could do 50% plus one, and be done. But on the state side, there are enhancers as well, and one of those enhancers are previous convictions. So.
Absolutely, and just the charges that he's facing. I mean, he's charged with murder and assault on a child causing death. What's the strategic difference between those two charges?
Well, I would say that murder is the greater included offense. This includes everything, and depending, murder implies a certain volition, right? And so, therefore, there may be a situation. Let's say, God forbid, the mom was involved in this somehow, or maybe she gets, or someone like her, or someone situated as her gets the lesser included offense. There's a harm on a child causing death. Murder implies an intent, deliberation, all of these things that really intensify and put this in the worst circumstance. Because they could charge him with both, they're going ahead and doing that. But theoretically, an accomplice or someone else that was there, and I believe a couple other people were held, at least for a moment, might be people that you might try to convict on the, quote, lesser included offense. But in his instance, he gets it all because he seems to be the ringleader in this. He seems to be the person that did it, got rid of her, got rid of the child, etc. And so the intent is there for him to be charged with murder.
Is it also just about ensuring that something sticks? I mean, of course, it appears at this point in time, after reading everything, that it may be an open and shut case, but I guess you just never know. Is that why prosecutors decide to, I don't want to use the term pile on, but add on these additional charges?
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather have a charge and not need it than to need it and not have it, right? And so therefore, someone like him, you're going to charge with everything that you possibly can, right? And so again, some others that are differently situated might be just the lesser included, but for him, you're going to charge him for everything he's, quote, eligible for. And the idea that maybe he's convicted of the lesser offenses as well as the larger offenses, that may help ensure that the potential punishment, et cetera, is intensified if he is conclusively convicted of all of these things.
Could they have charged special circumstances like torture or cruelty to potentially seek life without parole or even the death penalty?
Theoretically they could, but right now, the death penalty is kind of at a standstill in California. And I would say this as well. California is a little bit more honest about the whole idea that the death penalty does not have a preclusive effect, and an eye for an eye leaves everybody blind. And so it might make some people feel better to charge someone with the death penalty, but because of the automatic appeals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and from a societal standpoint, it's so much more expensive to give someone death as opposed to give them life. It's probably more honest to say this guy can get 25 years to life, and as a practical matter, because of this manner of death, et cetera, he would never see the light of day.
Can the way the body was disposed, the child was found in a dumpster, which is so egregious, like how we've been saying, can that affect sentencing or how the jury sees intent?
Absolutely. It can, because, you might argue, and Tim, we had a recent case where there was a question as to whether or not this person that killed someone, a child that they didn't know, could possibly have had the intent and the deliberation so that they could get first degree or the highest degree of murder. Here, you're not going to have that because, among other things, not only is it a child he knows that probably he may have been trying to hurt his former girlfriend, etc. You've got reason, you've got intent, even though you don't always, you've got motive, which you don't always necessarily need. And you've got afterward him taking him, throwing him in the trash, and all these other things. So all of these things can lend to, can be this drawing line that allows you to stitch together the intent and be certain about it, so that not only is he charged, but he's convicted and punished at the highest level.
And we touched on this a little bit in the beginning, but court records show a violent criminal history, including recent domestic violence and assault charges. Why wasn't this man behind bars?
That's a good question. And we could get into this larger discussion, of course, about jail overcrowding, et cetera, and all of these other things. But depending on the timing, I don't know, all of the circumstances, but, if it's a stateside charge, there's always hope that he could get to the street. I don't know also from a factual standpoint how much cooperation there was related to the domestic violence and some of these types of things. And I don't know if there has been some kind of discussion related to his conviction and his punishment that brings into account his childhood, that brings into account these things that are potentially sensitizing, and that may have lessened the blow as it pertains to length of time. Or if he pled these things out as opposed to being convicted of them, he probably comes in lower anyway because other charges might have gone away in exchange for a guilty plea.
Does California law allow prior accusations or charges, even the ones that didn't lead to convictions, to be brought up in a murder trial?
Well, yeah, it can be. Now, charges, I think, are a little bit more difficult. But previous convictions and things like that, technically, there's not supposed to be evidence related to character, but could there be prior bad acts? And could there be ways to get other things in that could negatively affect him here? Yeah, there absolutely could be. But to my mind, I think that this is suggested more likely to happen as it pertains to the penalty phase as opposed to the conviction phase. Because based on what we see, I don't think they're going to have any problems convicting him. There's going to be a matter of how long they punish him for. And I think the previous things probably come in to suggest that all the more. I just don't see any gray area on these facts in terms of the jury looking at this like a whodunit, like, oh, maybe someone else did it. I don't see that. And the less of a possibility there is of that, that means that they probably don't need the prior bad acts, at least as it pertains to convicting him.
Well, let's talk about accountability and just the overall big picture here, because we are talking about a deceased child. When someone with multiple violent charges is allowed back into the community and something like this happens, who, if anyone, is held accountable?
Wow. You can have this discussion and go a lot of different ways with it. We had discussions about this even in our last presidential race because the Democratic nominee was someone that had worked in the criminal justice system as attorney general, et cetera, and those types of things, and as a DA. So you can give some accountability to everyone or to no one. You can say that, this is really about the system. We should lock this person away and throw away the key, and that's what we should have done. But it's very, very hard, frankly, short of killing someone. It's very, very hard for someone that age to be put away for just domestic violence. And I'm not minimizing it at all. But someone that's convicted of domestic violence, by definition, at some point is probably going to be on the street, particularly somebody that young. There were other things that had happened. So you can kind of dole out responsibility a lot of different ways. Hindsight is always 20/20. And the charges were the charges previously. The punishments were the punishments. I don't know if he hit the street a little bit earlier because of overcrowding and things like that. Might depend on which county and some of those types of things. And again, there's a matter of if he pled, if he's in jail for a couple of years waiting for something to happen. You plead to 5 years, you plead to 4 years, you might get out on time served with probation. That's just the way that it works. And so we can talk out loud about whether we lock the door and throw away the key. And when we do that, but that was a whole cause of a particular political discussion when it pertained to drug offenses and things like that. If it was simple, somebody would have put a patent on it and sold it. And we see very, very clearly now, and we can always say that, but we always do after the fact. But based on what he'd been convicted of, sure, it's outrageous that he wasn't behind bars or that he did this at all. We're going to naturally ask, why did it happen? Could there be something that we could have done to prevent. But that's still just a very complicated and entangled question.
And of course, we're waiting on more details to come out. We don't know as of this moment why Elyjah was around the defendant. How did the defendant get to the little boy? We don't know any of that information right now. But just based off of what we do know, what kind of legal exposure could Elyjah's mother face if she knowingly allowed someone violent around her son?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. We don't know. To your point, there are a lot of things that we don't know. One of them is whether or not there is a violation for him being allowed to be around her. We don't know if there is anything that says there is a restraining order or a no contact or whatever. To the extent that she may have, what if she had a no contact order? What if she had a restraining order? And somehow, I think it's a very fair question, or a real question at least, to say, why does he have proximity to you and to your children if he's an ex-boyfriend, particularly if there were domestic violence related situations? The question becomes whether the police or whether the DAs, et cetera, that would do the charging, are more likely to have her go along to make sure he's convicted properly, or to punish her as well, or to use the threat of one to facilitate the other. So that's the part that we don't know about yet. But it is certainly very interesting. We're all sitting here with our arms folded. Any mother saying, how is it that this child, and sounds like he's a younger guy too, how is this person around your child, particularly given his background, particularly given what it sounds like she may have even gone through with before? And that is a very that's not only a legal question, but that's a moral question, because a whole lot of mothers may be standing in judgment right now saying this should never have been even allowed to come close to happening at all. And so it creates more questions than answers.
Even if she didn't directly harm the child, I mean, could she face charges for neglect or child endangerment? Or just given the circumstances, do you think usually in a lot of cases, the prosecution, they wouldn't also charge the mother who's dealing with burying her son?
They have a lot to unpack there, right? And so theoretically, depending on the facts, could there be some kind of child endangerment or child neglect or something like that? Theoretically, there could be, unless it was a situation where she was overpowered, where something really happened, where she was in the space and then XYZ happened and she didn't call the police. Yeah, there's a lot of things to be unpacked there, but I believe she has other children. And if that's the case, my sense is maybe the DA picks its battles and says, we're going to have you testify to make sure we check the dots with him so that you can deal with what's left with your own family. So sometimes, there's discretion. The DA can do what the DA wants to do, but the DA may, looking around the corner, decide to make a certain determination to say, here's who I'm going to go after, and hopefully she gets the help that she needs and she can continue to go forward. Because I think the only thing that would be worse is that if you have somebody that wants to be a mother and she has other children, a situation where she's not even allowed to be a mother to the children that are left because of this criminal side issue.
Well, let's talk about the jury. How do cases involving children typically impact jury selection?
Well, you might have folks that'll say, here are the types of people that we need on the jury. A case like this, though, is so egregious that I'm not sure that, first of all, this defendant is not going to have the means to, this is not O.J. Simpson situation where you go and get the Johnny Cochran of the day and you pay millions of dollars to get great jury consultants and all these other things. I think that all segments of society will be equally aggrieved and be equally shocked to the negative by the facts that we have here. So I don't know whether these guys stand back and they look at this potential situation and say, because I'm younger, because I'm a young mother, because I'm an older mother, who is it that's more inclined to apply grace to this particular individual? And I don't know who that is. I mean, it would be a stab in the dark. They'd be taking an educated guess about it. But when things happen to children who are innocent victims, whether you're talking about sexual assault or whether you're talking about murder, I don't think anybody's particularly sensitive to that.
Where does the defense even begin to fight this?
I would say you have to get to his mental state. You've got to see if there's a way where you can fight on his intent, on his, and this is assuming that there's nothing in terms of, oh, this other person was involved, or any of those types of things. If that's there, they want to pull that out of the hat, that's fine as well. But my sense is you really got to get to his mens rea, and you've got to get to what was happening in his mind to lessen the potential or level of liability for purposes of potentially saving his life, particularly giving him another opportunity to get out of jail in 10 to 20 years, etc. But even then, that's a very, very difficult question and a difficult thing to unpack.
Do you see a plea deal being offered, or do prosecutors tend to avoid plea deals in cases involving murdered children?
My sense is if they have their ducks in line and they know that the mother will testify the way that she needs to, they don't have to offer a plea deal. They are very much in the driver's seat and they can throw the book at him. What would the quote offer be? Well, the offer may be because he can get 25 years to life. Well, maybe there's potential for getting out of jail at a certain period of time. This also assumes that his enhancers related to his previous crimes really put him in a worse situation where they could offer him something that gives society what it needs, puts him away for a long time, but maybe gives him hope of, with 20 to 30 years of rehabilitation, getting back on the street. But they don't have the pressure of having to offer a plea deal at all, particularly if their facts are in line. And I don't know that they do it because so many people are watching and this is so egregious, etc. Now, if there was a question between life or death, that would be the clear line of demarcation. We'll give you life in prison without possibility of parole, so we don't have to give you the electric chair or the gas chamber. But that's not happening in California. So you don't really have that line of demarcation. So it's important to wonder, what else might be out there for them. But they have no pressure at all in this case because they can throw the book at them, and the jury probably helps them, and they probably are going to be successful.
Well, this is a case that we will definitely be following. Joe, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
A GoFundMe has been made for Elyjah's family. The funds will be used to help Elyjah's family with funeral and burial expenses. For Law and Crime, I'm Kennedi Walker.